you don't have just one way. You can, worship one of your household gods, or you can, take the path of action, or take the path of wisdom, or take the path of meditation. They have different paths, and sometimes these are kind of assigned to you from, what your family did. But there are people that sort of switch, and it's kind of finding the right practice for you, and acknowledging that one way isn't right for everybody. And I will absolutely acknowledge that Zen Buddhism is not saying Zen Buddhism isn't right for everyone, but there's a certain profile of people for whom Zen Buddhism holds an attraction, and it's fine. I feel like these are all paths up the same mountain, and my path is the one that's right for me, and I just hope others can find the one that's right for them.
Hello there, this is Kevin Pennell, and welcome to episode 161 of Toward a Better Life. Thanks to you, dear listener, for tuning in to the episode, and regardless of where in the world you might be, our lives can flow with a natural rhythm, a natural flow of life to ultimately aim toward balance. And this is the timeless message of Toward a Better Life, going with the flow in the rhythm of life. That's also performed through implementing balance, harmony, compassion, kindness into our lives, personally, culturally, and spiritually. This all begins with each one of us as individuals. I like to share these concepts on the podcast from around the world, seeking others of the same spirit, heart, and mind so that they can also share their story with you. And through the application of the many insights and teachings from the episodes, we can become better souls, spirits, and true human beings that continue a journey toward wholeness and harmony, not only for ourselves, but yet for the generations to come. I also offer you the opportunity to share your prose, music, poetry, or storytelling on the program, and thanks to all of you that have sent that information into me in the past. Please subscribe to the program if you haven't done so already through your favorite podcast platform, and do keep following for weekly magical insights into earth-based spirituality, self-development, self-care. Also, remember to support Toward a Better Life by leaving a review on Apple, Spotify, whatever podcast platform you might be using. It only takes a moment to leave that review. Do visit the website, towardabetterlife.com, where you can contact me to learn more about free discovery call to help you on your own journey, along with some prior episodes, learning opportunities, and services that I offer outside the podcast, plus a few accessories to assist you on your own journey. Contact me through a website or send inquiries to me, kevin@towardabetterlife.com. Well, we've shared a lot through the years on the podcast about various philosophies, ways of life, pathways, if you will, and you've also heard me reference that there are many paths up the mountain, the same mountain, and choosing the one that's working for you is your part for your life of learning. And William Gadea and I will be exploring one of those paths in this episode. William is a Peruvian-American author, filmmaker, and Zen Buddhist practitioner. He's written Arrow, The Power and Poison of Story, which explores how storytelling shapes our minds, our sense of self, and our happiness, drawing on neuroscience, evolutionary psychology, and personal experience. William looks at how the stories we tell can both heal and hinder us, and how awareness of this process can help us live and, have more clarity and compassion in our lives. He's also the creator of What is Mind, a YouTube channel about consciousness. William joins me today from his office in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Please help me welcome William Gadea on this episode as we explore his book and his pathway. I'd like to welcome William Gadea to the program today to Toward a Better Life. William, so good to see you, and welcome to the program. And where are you located, and how are you doing?
Kevin, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. And today I am in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and it is a beautiful summer day out there today.
Okay. So you're in that other zone, aren't you? Because we're in winter here.
That's right. Yes. It's so strange to be in Christmas, for instance, and Christmas is sort of built on all those pagan holidays. I think
Yeah.
I don't think Christians are going to be offended to have that pointed out.
No.
And you know, it's supposed to be a time of introspection. But you
Yeah.
look outside down here in the southern hemisphere, and it's sunny and it's a midsummer. It doesn't feel right, you know?
It doesn't feel like introspection, does
No, it doesn't.
it? I'll give you a call in June. How's that?
That's right. Yeah.
Might be a little different there. So,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about yourself. We're going to talk about your book and everything, but tell us a little bit about William because you have quite an interesting backstory. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then move on to some other stuff. So,
Sure. I've sort of been all over the place. I was born in Peru, and then when I was seven, my family, all seven of us, moved to Australia, and we were looking for better economic opportunities, better education for us kids. And I mainly grew up in Australia until age 14. But then the business that my family had, we had a South American handicrafts business, and that kind of went south. So we went back to Latin America, but this time to the Dominican Republic.
hmm,
And I finished high school there and then came up to study film at New York University. And for the most part, I've lived most of my life in the United States. Um, I do speak Spanish, but English is my better language.
okay.
And I've lived mainly in New York, a little bit in LA. And about 6 years ago, we moved down here to Argentina, and my wife loves it here. She's a jazz singer, and there's actually quite a bit of opportunities for jazz singers. I have a business, an animation business, and the animation talent down here in Argentina is great. So that worked out, and it seems to be a good solution for us. I think I wouldn't discount the possibility of going back to the United States. There's a lot I miss about being in the States, but Argentina is a lovely place to be into.
Yeah. I know that when we got kind of acquainted with each other, you had sent me a note, and we're talking about the book that we want to look at, which is Arrow, and the power and poison of story, which I'm going to just read it here, which explores how storytelling shapes our minds, our sense of self, and our happiness. So that's kind of what draws us together and into the theme of Toward a Better Life. You know, the things that we can
Hmm.
do to create happiness, to create joy, to create what I like to think of as contentment, which is happiness can come and go, but contentment is something that is to me is a little bit more, I'm going to say static, but not in a bad way.
Hmm.
It's something it's more consistent, I guess would be a better way of putting it.
Yeah,
So, you're into film and you're an animator and you are a Buddhist as well. So, what led you into
that's right.
Buddhism, if you don't mind my asking?
Well, it kind of came in two phases. There was a time when I was in my late 20s when I kind of fell into a spiritual crisis, and it was very painful. But when you look back on it, it was also a very, very special time. There's a certain force of nature that makes you wake up and ask yourself, what am I? Why am I? And those questions seem to have like a force that is hard to squelch. And so that preoccupied me for a long time. And I did a lot of reading. I read, the Bible. I read the Taoist classics. I read the Hindu classics. I read about Buddhism. And Buddhism was something that had attraction to me. at that stage, I didn't really find a teacher, and that is a regret of mine. It wasn't until my mid 40s when I had another accounting, when I felt like my life is stunted. I'm not happy with where I am. I want to push forward. I want to be a better person, better life, toward a better life. And I went to a Zendo, and there was this feeling of tranquility that you get almost the moment you step through the door. And I remember when my teacher, Pat Enkyo O'Hara, asked me in an interview, "What brings you here?" And I said, "I want to be a better person."
Hmm.
And she remembered that, and years later, she reminded me of what I said. And uh, I, I feel like Buddhism has been something that has really opened up my personality. You know, in Buddhism, we talk about the lotus as metaphor, right? It's a sort of a flowering of the personality and opening up. And a wonderful thing too, I think, is kind of seeing it in other people that are also following the practice, kind of seeing that other people are going through the same thing, something parallel to your journey.
Hmm.
So that's pretty much how I found Buddhism, and of course, I still practice it down here in Buenos Aires. I found a sangha here, a community here to be a part of, and it's a practice that I take to every day. You know, I just before we talked, I sat down here and meditated for half an hour just to be in the proper mind to speak to you.
Oh,
And I really appreciate that opportunity to touch what we call our original face, right?
hmm.
Our true nature.
Hmm.
And you know, we were talking before we started about other traditions, and I don't think Buddhism is the only way to do this, but it's the one that feels most natural for me.
There you go. That's
Yeah.
and that's the big part of it, isn't it? To me,
Mm.
if
Yeah.
it feels right and if it feels natural to you, then that's good. It really doesn't matter. What
Yeah.
matters is how do we feel about ourselves? How do we feel about our interactions with other people? I
Mhm.
am curious, what attracted you to Buddhism in the first place? You mentioned that you were in your 20s and you had read a lot of different books and so forth, and you were attracted to Buddhism. What attracted you? There's a reason
Well,
why I'm asking.
yeah, no, I think it was one of the books that um, I read that kind of drew me in was Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, which is a classic volume by Shunryu Suzuki, who founded the Zen Center in San Francisco, and it's just really a transcription of his talks.
Hmm.
But there's a beautiful simplicity in what he talks about. You know, he says our practice is nothing special. You know, people come to these Eastern traditions. I'm not sure quite what they expect, that there's going to be levitation, there's going to be mystical, magical things, and there is a magic, but he's just kind of tamping that down and say it's right in front of your nose.
Yeah.
This special life is right in front of your nose. You just have to open it up, and you do it by sitting down. Sitting down is nothing special. It's just sitting down and 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 being with yourself.
So what I'm hearing is it was a sense that you felt harmony and you felt quietness and you felt in spite of everything else that's around. When was that? I'm pointing as far as time frame, but do you remember
Yeah.
about when that was, time
Uh,
wise?
it was 18 years ago when I walked into the Village Zendo in New York.
Okay,
What does that put
2000,
us?
yeah, 2000 something.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
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 Okay.
And
Because yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
no, you're on.
Well, I was just going to say, I think there was also a diagnosis of the human condition that I really related to, and that I'm trying to kind of elaborate on in my book, which is that the reason you have this suffering is because you make up all these stories in your head, right? And stories are they're what make us human, right?
Right.
They're wonderful things. We use it to bond with each other. We use it to coordinate with each other. We use it to entertain each other. We use it to pass on wisdom. It's really kind of like the conductive wire for culture in our society, these
Hmm.
stories we tell. But at the same time, somewhere along the way, these stories kind of become you. Yourself, or what you call yourself, is just this bunch of stories. And I think the reason I had this lingering unhappiness, this lingering discontent, was because I had these stories about what my life should be, and the life I saw in front of me didn't measure up, and I think if you can kind of see these stories as just stories, you don't have to give them up. I think it's probably impossible to give them up. But if you can take away some of their power, some of this idea that these stories are real, that
Hmm.
they're an actual reality when they're not, they're just these fictions that are swimming around in your head, then you can kind of get a release and find each moment freshly, which I think is what Buddhism is all about.
I think when you start to look at stories, where my brain goes a lot of times is I think about the old myths and legends. And within the myths, there is truth,
Of
usually.
course. Yeah.
There are truths that we can take home from us for us, but there is also truths of actual events that may have taken place, and simply we call it now artist license, where we embellish on it a little bit, but the truth of the thing still is there. The teaching is still there, and that's what we take away. Uh, I've mentioned a couple of times on podcasts within the Welsh tradition. There's the story of Taliesin, who is looked at as the great bard of all. I mean, he was a wonderful, wonderful storyteller. And there are bits of information about how much of Taliesin's life is real, how much of it is not real. It doesn't really matter, because if there's a part of that life that speaks to you, it's real,
Mhm,
and
mhm, mhm.
it helps you with your life, and so that's even more real, because it helps to shape you, and not in a negative way. It's a way, like you had alluded to, you're more comfortable with that as opposed to whatever is over here,
Mhm, mhm,
because it just simply resonates with you.
mhm, mhm,
So
mhm.
I'm spinning off into something here. I found it interesting that the couple of points that you made, and even in my own life experiences, I found that so often people in their 40s, their 30s, late 30s, early 40s, mid to late 40s, just a little shy of 50, maybe they can go over that, but there tends to be not just subtle shifts like when we turned 30.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
These were prominent shifts in
Yeah,
life,
yeah.
like saying, okay, I'm on the other side of that apex and I'm looking down,
Right,
or
right.
however you want to look at it. And I'm saying, what have I done with my life? What do I
Mhm,
really
mhm.
want? And I have to tell you, that was the reason why I was saying there was a reason for asking the question. It was because it piqued my interest when you said 40s, because that's when the big change came for me. I was in my late 40s,
Yeah.
and I I understand what you're saying, because some of those changes, many of those changes were not necessarily, I'm going to say, fun, but they were
Mhm. Oh,
needed.
comfort.
And
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
now I look back at those and say,
Mhm,
I'm so happy that they happened. I really am.
mhm,
I'm
Hmm.
contented
Hmm.
that they really happened because
Hmm.
if they didn't, William, I wouldn't be where I am.
Right,
I
right.
wouldn't be enjoying life.
Well, I've heard some people say before, and I wonder whether this is your experience or not, but that there's a sort of, in terms of contentment, that there's a sort of a smile quality about life that earlier on you're more happy, and then it comes to some sort of canyon there, and then it starts getting happier after that. That's certainly been my experience,
Oh yeah.
and of course it's hard to it's you have to be careful about the words you use,
Mm,
happiness, meaning, they're all kind of related, but a bit different, right?
right.
And oftentimes you can have a life that is uncomfortable but deeply fulfilling, or the opposite too.
Yeah. So let's explore your book a little bit. Why is it called Arrow?
Sure, sure. Well, there is an old Buddhist story about a monk called Malunkia. And Malunkia lived in Buddha's time, and he went up to the Buddha, and he was sort of like me, a bit of an intellectual. So he goes up to the Buddha and he says, Buddha, I have certain questions, and they're sort of metaphysical questions. And if you don't give me an answer to these questions, I'm going to leave this monastery and I'm going to leave this practice because I really need to know the answer to these questions. And the Buddha says, when did I ever promise you the answer to these questions? And then gives him a little parable. He says, if an arrow should fly and pierce your skin, and that arrow has poison, what should we do? Should we ask, oh, what sort of bow did it come from? What sort of aerodynamic qualities does it have? What sort of materials is it built out of? Or do we just suck out the poison? And the Buddha says, I'm here to suck out the poison. That other stuff isn't important. I talk about what I want to talk about. And he just leaves it there for him. And Malunki, of course, sees the error of his ways and commits himself to life in the monastery. But what I did with that is just kind of stretch that metaphor. An arrow is also like a story, right? It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It can carry different things. It can carry poison. It can carry messages. It can carry fire. It can travel through the air very quickly. An arrow is like a story. And I guess I'm interested in the arrow. I'm sorry, Buddha. I guess I'm an unrepentant Malunkya. I want to get at the diagnosis. And perhaps there's some value in the diagnosis, right? Perhaps there's some value in understanding why these stories can sometimes make us unhappy and why we need them.
An interesting point sometimes I would think on stories is if they make us unhappy, if they pierce our being, as it were, is it something that I need to change and I'm not ready to change it? Is it a
Mm,
matter of something that I need to shift in my life? And so it's making me uncomfortable. It has pierced something in me that needs to be pierced. Um,
mm.
my
Well, I
brain,
think
go
you're
ahead.
I think you're getting at something there in the sense that we have these emotions, and sometimes those emotions like anxiety, etc., can point out things that need our attention. These emotions that are sometimes uncomfortable, I don't think they're always bad.
Hmm.
Uh, but I guess what I would say is that if you can if you can stop living in this sort of bubble of story, if you can kind of see that quality of the story as being a construct, not an actual reality, then that liberates you to untangle those other things that need untangling. Uh, Oftentimes, my wife goes to a therapist, and we have these little arguments sometimes, and about what the better kind of psychotherapy is, psychotherapy East, psychotherapy West. I think Alan Watts wrote a book about that. But I feel like the two things can actually perhaps be a little bit complementary. I see it as kind of loosening the knot and then untying the knot. I don't think that there's a lot of things that can kind of go with Buddhism, including belief in deities, by the way. A lot of the teachers I've worked with have been one of them was Kaku Gun, who's passed away now, but he used to be a UCC pastor and also a sensei in Arsendo. So, I think the way Buddhism is built, it can overlap with these other practices too.
Hmm. And we've talked about this within our Druidry groups because it's hard. It's maybe hard for some to understand, but there are Christian Druids,
Mm.
there are Buddhist Druids, and
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that they're wishy-washy. It just means
Mhm.
that they bring certain things with them on their journey because it feels right, and it's okay for that. And we can go off onto Søren Kierkegaard and start talking about his philosophy of life and how you need to be able to experience stuff in order to say it is true or not. And I don't know that I
Mhm.
necessarily disagree with that, but
Mhm.
it's a thing that we as humans want to do. We want to experience something to say, yes, that works for me, or no, that doesn't work for me. It took 10 years for me to realize that I've mentioned it before. I pastored churches for 10 years, and I don't put down anyone who goes to church. If that is their method of reaching spirituality, that's fine. It just doesn't work for Kevin, and that's okay too.
Mhm.
And
You know,
yeah.
No, I've lately I have a podcast too, and I had a professor of Hindu studies over, and we talked about the multimodality of Hinduism, which I find
Mm,
really interesting,
mm.
right? You don't have just one way. You can, worship one of your household gods, or you can, take the path of action, or take the path of wisdom, or take the path of meditation. They have different paths, and sometimes these are kind of assigned to you from, what your family did, but there are people that sort of switch, and it's kind of finding the right practice for you, and acknowledging that one way isn't right for everybody. And I will absolutely acknowledge that Zen Buddhism is not saying Zen Buddhism isn't right for everyone. It's when I look at the people in our sangha, there are certain people that are overrepresented. It's overrepresented by introverts. It's overrepresented by intellectuals, artists, people in the helping professions. I'm not saying that those are the only people it can serve, but there's a certain profile of people for whom Zen Buddhism holds an attraction, and it's fine. I feel like these are all paths up the same mountain, and my path is the one that's right for me, and I just hope others can find the one that's right for them.
There you go. Oh, you heard that, didn't you? I've been sending that thought your way for a while. The last 30 seconds anyway, because
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was it was it was actually part of a chapter in the book that I wrote, and I talked about, it was an analogy that my teacher shared many, many times through our times together. And that was, there are many paths up the mountain, but it's all the same mountain.
Yeah.
And our desire is to reach the summit of that mountain in this lifetime, But here's the big secret or truth, whatever you want to call it. I may not meet the summit in this life, and that's okay
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
because I can also look back and see how far this path has come and how many different little tributaries, if I can use, or side tracks that is taken. And I really do believe that we come so close in so many ways. We can reach out and we can touch that person that's right next to us going up the mountain because they're so close to us.
Mm.
And you summarized an interesting point with the Buddhist thought, and there's so many different pathways. And we have an ongoing joke among druids, and that is that if you get 10 druids in a room, you'll have 15 opinions. So,
Right.
and I'm hearing that it could be the same way with Buddhists.
Yeah. Well, we were talking a little bit before the podcast started, and I was just telling you my feeling that, in a sense, it's kind of difficult to not be an to some degree, right?
Hmm.
When you have kids, they're kind of natural animus. You do good night moon. You do little train that could. They're naturally turning these inanimate objects into things with spirit and personality, and uh, I think that engagement with the world around you, with imagination, with reference, I think that's really powerful. And I don't think that you need to give up anything to do that.
There you go.
I think it can be something that is organic. One of the most powerful examples of that in my life, I have to say, when I lived in Australia in Brisbane. We used to go play cricket by a creek in the neighborhood, and it was just, all the boys in the neighborhood, and our dogs would sometimes join us off leash, of course.
Yeah.
And there was this gorgeous tree. It was Moreton Bay fig. It's probably still there on Dumbarton Drive in Brisbane, if anyone's hearing from Brisbane. And it was just a huge beautiful tree, and it had these roots stretching out, and we'd climb it, and we'd sometimes carve initials on it, and but it was just kind of like an uncle to us, like a big craggy uncle. And that was, when I was in my early teens. And when I went back there when I was in my 50s. Of course, the tree was still there. And to just go back and touch it, it just felt like such a moving experience. It was like seeing an old relative again. And it's just wonderful to have that relationship with another living being that doesn't even have to be animal one.
Well, when you look at even in the chemistry and the biology of trees and of flora like that, and realizing that there's the mushrooms that are growing nearby, and the mycelium that comes from the mushroom goes into the root system, and that the grand old oak can be standing there, and the grand old oak, the mother, if you will, can identify her children that are there, and she can
Mm,
find the children. And I just read this, and it's a beautiful
mm,
story about
mm,
how they identify with their children that are growing from their root system, and they know which children need what type of nutrients and which
mm,
ones are getting the right amount of nutrients and which ones are not getting there. And it is so similar to our own life and
mm,
what we have. And to recognize that when I go out and I sit by a tree, and you talking about climbing all over your uncle, I can appreciate that so much because there's nothing quite like sitting down at the tree and just having my back up against the tree. And I even use this story sometimes when I'm sharing with people about if you really want to connect with the natural world, go find a tree, sit down on the earth right next to it, put your hands in the earth, and just lean back and feel the tree.
mm.
And if you just are quiet enough, long enough, I truly do believe you can begin to feel the heartbeat of that tree and you can feel the heartbeat of the mother. And it's amazing stuff. And
Yeah,
you were
yeah.
talking about the magic. If that ain't magic, William, I don't know what is.
No, I agree. And I think there's been quite a bit of science about the communication of plants.
Yeah,
It's all stuff that's been verified scientifically.
yeah. The Secret Life of Plants. It's a great book.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about your book, Arrow, The Power and Poison of Story. So it is out, it's available,
hmm
and so how if you were to classify it, would it be, I don't know, is it a book for self-help, self-care? How would you look at it?
I think there's a little bit of self-help there. There's definitely some kind of sharing of my journey, but I think it's also a book that is sort of between science and spirituality.
Okay.
I'm a big science nerd, so I really kind of feel nourished by all that information. And just to give you an example, when I talk about how our self becomes a story, there's some really interesting discoveries that have been made in the last 30 years or so. And one of the central ones is what they call the default mode network. What they were trying to do, the way they discovered this was kind of interesting. What they were trying to do was trying to find out, what functions in our brain correlate with what neurons. So
Hmm.
they put people in machines and started doing it. And before they started, they're kind of, how when you're making a cake, you kind of zero out the weight of the container,
Hmm.
right? So you can be sure you're
All
you're
right.
weighing the flour accurately. They're
Mm-hmm.
trying to come up with a baseline for what was happening in the brain, the noise, right? And they're going, oh, wait a second. The same neurons are firing when we're doing nothing in all these different subjects. Well, why is that? And it wasn't actually the function mapping that was the big discovery here was that we have this default mode network. And when we're doing nothing, the default mode network gets really noisy, right? It's
Hmm.
that daydreaming that we do, that storytelling in our head, the storyifying, if you will.
Hmm.
And when we are focused on a task, reading a newspaper or having dinner with somebody, then the default net mode network gets quieter. It's like on a seesaw. But whenever nothing's happening, it shoots up. And what is happening when the default mode network is fired? It's basically telling stories about our past, trying to make sense of our biographical past, planning for the future. It's evaluating our social ties, like doing a little bit of social rehearsal, like, oh, if my boss says something, then I'm going to reply with a certain thing. All these sorts of things that happen in our head, and they're all about kind of creating a narrative that helps us function socially. It's not like it doesn't have a function. It's very functional. We're dedicating a huge amount of energy to keeping these default mode network going, but but it also kind of gets a little out of control, right? I don't know what your social media habits are, but I kind of hate it when my head kind of gets filled up with all this crud after I've been on social media. And, you know, that's the kind of stuff that just doesn't belong there,
That's it.
that I'd prefer to get rid of. And
Hmm.
I think kind of quieting down this default mode network is what meditation does. And I think it's something that can make us more connected with the people we're with, and it can make us more connected with the world if we just have a practice of quieting that background noise that, it serves a purpose sometimes, but it can kind of get away from us and start making our lives less pleasant and less fulfilling.
Mm. I I heard Philip Cargam yesterday with our Druid group that meets, and we meet every Monday on YouTube. On excuse me, he is on YouTube prior to it, and then we had, it's called Tea with a Druid, and then after that at half past the hour, it is Biscuits with a Druid. So the
Hmm.
Biscuits program is only available to those that are involved with OBOD, the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids. And
Hmm.
we're talking about meditation itself, and we're talking about we want to start doing some Zoom stuff as both meditative and instructional as far as
Hmm.
meditation is concerned. And I really
Hmm.
want to get my hands on a paper that he just wrote, or not wrote,
Hmm.
he just read. Here's one for you, William. How many types of meditation do you suppose there are in the world?
Oh, wow. I have no idea, but it must be hundreds.
You got it.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
said in the paper that he read, there's 301. I want to know what the one is. But that's just the way I'm wired. Not 316. Nope, one. I
Right,
want to know what one
right.
is. But that
That's
again,
funny.
that's my nerdy side. That's my nerdy
Yeah, yeah.
philosophical side. If I had known Alan Watts, I would love if Alan Watts were still alive, I would love to have an opportunity to sit and talk with him because the way he's wired, I said, I like this.
Hmm.
And Joseph Campbell the same way.
Hmm. Oh, yeah, yeah.
But one of the things that I caught in some information about your book was, and I'm going to read it here. It says this new ability became not just a tool of communication and organization, but a mechanism of self-regulation and social connection. We became, and I love this, story animals. And there's so much to be said for the social part. And I do appreciate so much what you're sharing, William, about the social media that's out there. We become so socially in touch, I say, in media, that we're starving socially in
Hmm.
our
Hmm.
actual connection with other people. And
Yeah.
I often want to ask the question to people about, oh man, I have 800 followers on, whatever it is. And I say, yeah, great. So tell me, how many of those do you really connect with? Oh, I connect with them all the time. Really? Can you tell me what they're doing right now? Can you tell me what they did last night outside of what they did on social media? And you know what I'm driving at.
Of course.
Where is the, if it's a word, how do you really make contact? I mean,
Right.
we talked also recently about how, the technology that's out here. I mean, you and I are talking, you're in a different hemisphere than I am. And that's a miracle and it's magical at the same time. And yet, to me, I feel connected with you because there are little things called energetics. And the energy
Hmm.
that we have that we put out from our being, I believe it is not it's like a lot of stuff. It is not encumbered by space or time. There is no space or time when it comes to energetic. And I think that if you can communicate and using the tools that are there for us, we can communicate and establish some type of social uh, awareness, social interconnectedness beyond social media. Do you know where I'm going?
Right, right.
What do you
Yeah,
think? Yeah.
absolutely. And I think there's also a tendency with social media to really amplify the things that are most emotion arousing. So there's and also most controversial, the most extreme. There's the view of our lives, on something like Instagram. It's the most flattering. There's a distortive aspect there, and it's it's it scares me. Because not so much for me, but for kids, that have sort of grown up with this. Um, and I don't know if you've read the Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, but there is some numbers about the kind of anxiety and behaviors like suicide, etc., that just kind of shoot up, when social media started becoming really dominant.
Uh,
And right now, in Australia, they have an experiment where they're clamping down on it. And I think a lot of other countries are going to start thinking about that too.
Well, that there it
Um,
is. I mean,
yeah,
they're restricting social media for kids under a certain age and stuff like that. And
yeah.
it's it's as long as we can give them a reason, because
Mm,
do you remember what you were like as a teenager? I'd
of
know.
course.
We're curious and we're saying, why
Yeah,
not?
right, right. Yeah,
It doesn't hurt me. What are you talking about? But
yeah,
you're talking about a 15-year-old mind versus I'm going to say a plus 60-year-old mind. We'll leave it at
right.
that. And I'm thinking, so where's the correlation there, and how can we help people to understand? And it's when I'm saying people, they're young people.
Yeah, yeah,
They just don't
yeah.
have they have the brains, they just don't have the knowledge level or maybe the wisdom level. And what I'm seeing, I'm going to come back to your book here, is if I'm not mistaken, your book is really, really helpful in the sense of trying to find the path that really works for you as an individual, and also helping to learn to live an authentic life as opposed to a non-authentic life. And I think some of the times when we get into some of the social media that's out there, that's really not authentic life.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
just it is a shadow. It is a periphery of what really is going on. And so absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, am I on track with that as far as what your thoughts were with the book?
No, 100%, 100%. And what can you say? It's been said before, but I don't think it can be said enough that we really need to get past this, especially comparing,
Hmm.
the our life never seems adequate when it's compared to others. And you say kids kids rebel against it. I'm sure they do. But I've also heard some shall we say anecdotal evidence that kids don't really actually like it any more than we do. But they just like us, they feel they need to be on it because their friends are on it,
That's it.
you know? Yeah.
It's that it comes back to the community. It comes back to the community aspect. That
Right.
did you see my post last night on Facebook? No. Why not? Why didn't you go? Why didn't you look? And it's that guilt trip thing, and it's like,
Yeah, yeah.
because
Right. Right, right.
I read an article today, and it was really kind of an interesting thing, and that is that they talked about you have a group of people that are very, very drawn to team-related sports, and then you have a group of people that, with all due respect, could care less,
Hmm, hmm.
and they're not. One is not better than the other. It's simply who we are.
Mm,
It's simply who we are. And
hmm.
if we learn who we are and we learn what our authentic self is, and one of the biggest questions I get asked sometimes when I'm doing hypnotherapy stuff with people
Hmm.
is, and it's no surprise, is I want to know what my purpose is because I haven't figured it out yet.
Ah, yes.
And it's like you were saying about the
Yeah.
Buddhist thought,
Hmm.
it's right there in front of you. You
Hmm.
know, it really is. It's right there in front of you, and it keeps knocking on your door, and you're not listening. You're
Hmm.
not walking, you're not you're not taking the moment that it takes. Take four deep cleansing breaths and relax and just unwind and go into that one of the 301 forms of meditation and just be for a second. And maybe, well, I like to talk about as our helpers. You can call them the higher self. You can call them bubblegum wrappers. I don't care what you call them,
Hmm.
but there are those that are nearby us to help us. And it could be my higher self and says, man, I was wondering when you were going to shut up long enough for me to tell you what your purpose is.
Right, right. And I think another thing you can kind of pay attention to is it is paying attention to those moments when you're feeling your soul sing. The just the other day I was writing a piece, just a little essay, and I was just in the flow, as they say, right? Everything else disappeared
Hmm.
and just kind of moving words and paragraphs around and shaping my thought. And then I let it go. I went out in the street and it was like I was walking on a cloud. I felt like this is what I'm on earth to do. And I think you have to kind of pay attention to those moments of grace and look for more because I think that is where your purpose is. And of course, it's not the only key. You have to also, find other modes of relating. But I think that there's a marrow there that you kind of need to find and pursue in order to find your calling.
There is. And it
Mm.
sometimes, we would like to be able to say, I want it and I want it now. But unfortunately, there are certain maybe life lessons we need to go through. I don't regret any part of my life that I've had. I don't think any of it was a waste.
Mm.
And because it's all part of that journey, it's all part of that path, isn't it, William? That
Hmm.
we're just trying to be what we are. I mean, with
Mm.
you, you're an author, you're a filmmaker, you're a Zen practitioner, and some people would say, "Man, can't that guy make up his mind?" But it's who you are. It's who William is. If
Right.
I the podcast isn't long enough, or people would tune out, I think after a minute when I
Hmm.
really got off into saying, they say, "Well, what have you done?" And I say, "Well, I haven't
Hmm.
climbed Everest yet." I haven't been to the Andes yet.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's also real serendipity in kind of living messy lives. Like both you and I have, I think, sort of been over the map a little bit, but
Uh-huh.
there's a force there that can really help us. For instance, when I was in my 20s, I was writing plays. I was, the artist with a day job, and the day job was in Wall Street, and I hated it. It was word processing and creating graphics, and I really did not like it. It felt like I was walking into the belly of the beast every day. But oddly enough, all these business concepts kind of came into my mind. And when I started my own small business, wait, those things are starting to be useful. There's lots of, I think, opportunities to take diverse experience and apply them to where you wouldn't expect they would apply.
Yeah. And there's a big piece of that, and I'm going to run all the way back to the first part of our conversation. And I was going to nail you, William. I was going to nail you big time because I said, "Did you just read my transcript that I'm doing?" Because at least one episode a month, I'm starting to do my own thing where it's a solo
Mhm.
event.
Oh,
And this one is actually on introspection, and you said it. And I said,
great.
"Man, what did you read my transcript or what?" Because we talk about the introspection of winter and how you
Hmm.
go within and you look at stuff. And my question would have been that you were just sharing about is how do we come to these aha moments, for lack of better terms?
Mm.
How do we come to these thoughts in our mind that says, wait a minute. So some of this stuff that I've learned and some of the stuff that I've done, I didn't think it was really useful, but now it really is useful. It really is helpful. And
Mm.
the only way we found out about that is because we shut our minds off long enough to listen.
Mm.
And it goes back to introspection.
Right.
Just go back
Right.
and and just wait and be able to clear out the voices in my head. That seems to be a number one challenge for people that are trying to do any type of meditative work. And it's one
Yeah.
of the number one things that people will ask me, says, well, and you've probably gotten it too, saying, so William, how do you shut them off in your head? I'll ask you that question. How do you shut the voices off in your head? Because I have an answer for that.
Uh, what I always tell people, because when somebody tries to meditate, they kind of go, "Oh, I'm failing at this. This isn't working out. I'm really bad at it." And I go, "Did you sit down? It's a success. If you sat down on the cushion and you pay attention to what's going on, it doesn't matter if you get distracted. Even the masters get distracted sometimes. You have to measure it by your intention, not by results. It's a process. It's not a training where you get a grade for what you've done. It's something that evolves, and you have to put your faith in the process rather than try to measure the results.
Hmm. I always like to
Was
talk about.
that different than what you would have said?
No, it's actually very
Yeah.
similar. It's very similar, and I think it's ideal because what I usually say to people is I said, the distractions are going to come. And it's just like you said, even the masters get distracted. The difference is being able to come back to the focus point. And you said it too. Come back to the
Hmm.
intention. What is my intention? What do I want to
Hmm. Hmm.
accomplish? And by
Hmm.
doing so, I'm telling those voices, it's okay. I hear you, but not now.
Hmm.
Take a
Hmm.
number. I'll come back and see you in an hour.
That's right.
You're number 37. You mean there's 36 ahead of me? Yep. You just have to wait in line, bud. But I want it now. Well, that's too bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. This has been an interesting time. I truly appreciate it. I do want to know, just like I always ask, what does William do
Hmm.
to create a better life for himself?
I write, I think, I sit on the cushion, and when I'm with friends and my spouse, I try to be present. That's my practice of trying to lead a better life.
I think part of the magic of what you just said, William, is that presence, no matter where I am, be present in the moment. And, I share a lot of times with massage therapists when I'm doing continuing ed classes for them. I say, when you're in with a client, the most important person next to yourself right now is that client. It has nothing to do
Mm,
with business. It has
mm,
everything to do with they have put themselves in your hands and they trust
mm,
you for good
mm,
work. And if you're not focused on them, if you're not present with them, shame on you
mm.
because I'm here to help them be a better person. I'm here
Yeah.
to help relieve the pain that they're experiencing. I am I'm not a healer. I consider myself a facilitator. And it's all that presence, even to talk like we're talking. You said earlier that, words are to me, I would say words are very, very powerful and how you want to express yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And to carry on a conversation with someone and really talk with them, I have to be an active listener. And that
Mm-hmm.
includes presence, doesn't it? Being
Yeah.
present now.
Let me tell you a little story when you're talking about being present with your massage clients. There's a little story I tell in the book about a Buddhist nun whose practice was she was American born, but her practice was in Thailand. And her practice was spending time tending to people that had terminal diseases. And as a Buddhist, she wanted to ease their suffering. She couldn't ask them to meditate. She tried, of course, it didn't seem to work. We talked about everybody has their own path. Maybe a path of meditation isn't for everyone. So what
Hmm.
she did was she gave them massages, and that was a way of kind of bringing them to the present, to give some momentary relief, some momentary feeling of communion, if you will. So I thought that was beautiful, that choice she had made. And perhaps it's also indicative of what kind sometimes goes up with religions, because a lot of the monks in the area where she was, they would charge for those karma erasing rites, and she just gave it to them for free, and that seems to be, something that perhaps gets wrapped up in a lot of religions. Sometimes they become businesses, and there's something real there. A religious institution, a religious practitioner has to make a living too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to unfairly taint that, but at the same time, there was, I thought, a beauty in what she was doing and what she was offering these end of life patients.
Yeah, and that's really her choice, isn't it?
Mm,
It's her
yeah.
choice um, to do that, and that's I'm hearing again another piece of the book that I didn't see before and didn't hear before. It's also a practical guide on how to live
Mm, mm,
through stories,
yeah.
because it's just like you said, we are stories. We're not a
Mm,
story, we are stories, our
mm,
being.
mm, mm.
So
Yeah. A nest of these stories. Each story is a little twig, and it wraps us up.
yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does. All right. Do you have any thoughts you'd like to leave our folks with before we go? We've talked about a lot of stuff.
Yeah. No, just that it was a delight talking to you, Kevin.
That's our show for this week. Thanks ever so much to William Gadea for exploring the Buddhist path and his book, Arrow, The Power and Poison of Story. There are links in the show notes to connect with him and learn more about William, his book, and work. As always, a very special thanks to you, dear listener, for tuning into the program. Remember, if you are seeking insights and advice on how to create a better life for yourself, and if you'd like to dive into self-care, self-development, experience hypnotherapy, distant shamanic work, massage, or Reiki, drop me a line, kevin@towardaBetterLife.com, for your free discovery call. And in that call, we're going to talk about your goals and set your plans for achieving them and moving forward with your own journey toward a better life. You can also visit my website, towardaBetterLife.com, for past episodes, blog entries, and ways to enhance your spiritual journey, along with some upcoming events. Please subscribe to and follow Toward a Better Life through your favorite podcast platform, and do leave a review if you would on Apple, Spotify, Overcast, whatever your podcast platform may be. This helps to spread the word about the podcast, and it just helps the algorithms a bit. Always remember, if you'd like to share your story, music, or prose, or if you want to be my guest, please write to me, Kevin, at towardabetterlife.com. Until next week, enjoy your magical journey toward a better life.